What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gridiron here at House Call Sports. My name is Sammy. That is Mike. Then down below me is Gage. Today, we will be discussing that terrible, absolutely deplorable, disgusting Thursday night football game that took place last night. We'll be talking about coaches under the hot seat and some under and overachieving teams all across the league. But before we get into all of that shebang, ladies and gentlemen, our sponsor, you already know who it is. It's Vivid Seats. It's the most trustworthy and easy to navigate ticketing website. They have reliable and rewarding tickets and a 100% buyer's guarantee, which means your transaction will be safe and secure. You will get full service customer care and be compensated for any canceled events. And it's got the only ticket rewards program around. We're entering into the meat of the NFL season. Playoff races are going to start ramping up. NHL and NBA are also back in action very, very soon. I know the NHL season already started. That's certainly going to be interesting. Go Panthers for sure. Wherever you're going to go, whatever game you're going to go to, go sit vividly. Hit that link in the description. Now, gentlemen, first of all, how have you guys been? Everything has been good, right, Gage? Right, Mike? Everything has been swell, I would hope, for the most part. Yeah,
everything's good.
Everything's good. Good, because like last night was just terrible. I'll be honest. I did not have a good time watching whatever that was last night. Last night, to put it short, ladies and gentlemen, the Broncos absolutely whooped on the New Orleans Saints 33-3. It was hands down the worst Thursday night football matchup we have seen to date this year. And that's saying a lot given the fact that Thursday night football games in general just are not that good. A lot of rushing yards to go around for Denver. That was the story of the game. 225 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Not a lot of explosive offense going on. It was just two relatively poor quarterbacks going at it, and one team had an elite defense and a solid run game, and that pretty much summed up what ended up going on in the game. So Gage, I'll go ahead and start with you. What are your thoughts on what happened last night between the Saints and the Broncos?
I disagree. I don't think Spencer Rattler is a bad quarterback. He's just young, first year in the league. Was throwing to, let me check. Let me go down to those. Bub Means as your number one and Cedric Wilson as your 1 and 2 receivers. Yeah. Okay, I don't expect you to put up 30, especially when your defense, in the words of Bart Scott, can't stop a nosebleed. They might be historically bad on defense. I think if this keeps up for the next couple weeks, historically bad. Yes, they're hurt on both sides of the ball. Denver's defense is legit, even without Pat Surtain. It's legit. They didn't really have to do too much. Just stuff Alvin Kamara, the only playmaker on that side of the ball. Offensively, Cortland Sutton didn't get a touch. And yeah, I don't see you being able to run for 200 yards on every team, especially not get your star wide receiver the ball, or a target for that matter, Bo Nix. And don't let the win 33 fool you. It was on the back of Javonte Williams. Bo Nix threw for 165 yards. And was Bo Nix, you expect. Throwing ball 2 yards in, let your receivers do the work, and have some really bad throws.
Yeah, it was just a relatively rough outing for both QBs. For Bo Nix, I think one of the things that when I saw that throw, there was a throw where he had 2 wide receivers wide open, nobody near him, and somehow he ended up overthrowing the underneath wide receiver, but underthrowing the deep wide receiver. He kept that perfect medium so that it could be an incomplete pass. I've never seen a dot that accurate, really, ever. It was an ugly QB play. I do agree, Gage.
Also, Tyrann Mathieu had a ball in his hand and dropped it.
So intercepted. Like, it was literally right there. I don't know where Bo Nix was throwing to. But also Spencer Rattler, you're absolutely right. Did not have his O-line healthy. His wide receivers were not healthy. And as a result, Spencer Rattler couldn't do anything. Now, he still didn't make very good decisions, granted. But I mean, what other decisions, after really think about it, there's not much of decisions you can really make when you don't have any time and your wide receivers are just not very good. So, Mike, I'll go to you next. What are your thoughts on what happened during this game between the Saints and the Broncos?
Well, honestly, I mean, Bo Nix, he played a decent game. He was 16 for 26, 164 yards, but he didn't throw a touchdown or an interception. So that's what Bo Nix does. He's nothing special, just average. Spencer Rattler just had a bad game. It's going to happen. Home, it was Drew Brees night. Maybe he was a little nervous, the kind of shoes that he had to step in and fill. But the story of the game was Javonte Williams. I mean, 14 carries for 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was running the ball hard. That offensive line for Denver gave Bo Nix so much time last night. So, I mean, on the opposite side, Rattler, he didn't have any time. So that really was the difference in the game. And Bo Nix really didn't do much with that offensive line. It was mostly Javonte Williams. But just not a competitive football game. I really wish it was a little more competitive, especially being a primetime game. These Thursday night games have gotten a lot better. But, I mean, there's nothing to write off here. I mean, Spencer Rattler, he had a bad day. I think he's a good quarterback. He's got time to get better. And Bo Nix, I don't think he's going to be anything special in the NFL. I think he's just going to be a game manager. He's got a great running game, like I said, and a great offensive line, so that makes it easy. Rattler was dealing with pressure in his face all night. So a very uneven game and a sad night for Drew Brees, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a very, very sad night for Drew Brees, but I do want to shift gears a bit. Yes, I was going to give my thoughts on the game itself, but I really don't think there's much else that really needs to be said about the Saints and the Broncos. I really do think that there's something that needs to be said about head coach Dennis Allen, who's in his second year. Last year didn't go out very well, obviously, but this year they started off 2-0, put up a tremendous amount of points in the first 2 games. I believe the number was like 91 points. I think it was an incredible number. And they have now lost 5 straight games. And in those 5 straight games, a lot of things have happened, a lot of injuries, right? Concerning their offensive line. Their starting center, Eric McCoy, who's an amazing center, one of the best centers in the league. He's out. Cesar Ruiz is out as well. I mean, there's so many injuries, and that's not even mentioning the back-breaking injuries, which is losing Chris Olave and losing Raheem Shaheed. And it was just back-breaking injury after back-breaking injury. And then you lose your starting quarterback. So the backup quarterback is in right now. A backup rookie quarterback, no less. But in all honesty, I would be okay with the offense struggling if the defense was at the very least solid. But the reality is the defense is not good. The defense is actually bad. Gage said it, historically bad. We are entering historically bad. Like, to give you an idea, this is now the worst defense in terms of yards per game in the league right now. And they're also the 4th worst rushing defense. They're the 4th worst passing defense. And then you get the fact that you add to the fact that they allow the 26 most points per game. Dennis Allen, I'll put it to you straight, and we can segue this right into the coaches being on the hot seat. Dennis Allen's hot seat has to be scorching because, yes, I could understand the offense being as bad as it is. I can understand that, and I can be like, you know what? It happens. But it's the fact that the defense is absolute garbage and is one of the worst defenses in the league. When that is your MO, that is relatively unacceptable. And Dennis Allen, I get it. I believe it's year 2 now for Dennis Allen. It might be year 3. And he's dealing with injuries on both sides of the ball for sure. It's year 2, right? Okay, just to make sure it's year 2. I get it. It's only year 2, and you need coaches to give coaches some time. But at this point, I mean, you're looking at his side of the ball, and it is absolutely garbage on year 2. I mean, what are we waiting for at this point? They need to fire the coach. They need to do a hard reset in the franchise in general. I mean, there is no point in sticking with Dennis Allen, sticking with Derek Carr. At this point, it's time for a full-on rebuild. Keep some of the guys that are going to be part of your future. But honestly, there is no point for Dennis Allen or the Saints to invest in Derek Carr anymore, to invest in this team anymore. They've been needing to do a rebuild since Drew Brees left, since Drew Brees retired, since Sean Payton left the team. And for Sean Payton to be coaching the other side, the Denver Broncos, to come into your house on Drew Brees night and blow you out by 30 points, I'm sorry. There is no reason, guys, for Dennis Allen to be the head coach of the New Orleans Saints any longer, man. So yeah, I just think that from here on out, like if they really are going to keep it going with if they really are going to keep it going with Dennis Allen, I think they're just wasting their breath and straight up they're wasting their time. And so that's that. But Mike, I'm going to go to you next concerning coaches on the hot seat. Who do you have as your coach on the hot seat next?
I got Nick Sirianni on the hot seat with the Eagles. You know, he's been 37-19 record since he became the head coach, but it doesn't seem like that is going to be any good enough. Right now they have Saquon Barkley, which we thought was going to be a great acquisition in the offseason, and it just hasn't panned out that way. It's been a downward spiral ever since the Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs. Last year they started 10-1, looking like they were definitely going to go back to the Super Bowl, if not win it. And from that point on, they were 1-5. They got blown out by the Buccaneers in the wild card game, 32-9, I believe it was. And if they don't win a playoff game this year, if they don't start really showing a great trend, he's going to be on the hot seat. And I don't think he's going to make it next season. I don't think he's going to be there in Philly. And I think they've got a tough road ahead.
Yeah, Nick Sirianni is definitely some. He's been the talk of the town lately. I think the Philly fans are kind of just sick of like the way he's acting in general. Like he's not acting like a proper head coach, and it's ironic because I remember the year they were like Super Bowl contenders. They loved him, right? They were like, "Oh, this is a Philly guy right here." It's crazy how the Philly guy becomes so unlikable when you start to underachieve. Ironic, be that as it may. So. Gage, I'll go to you next, bro. Who do you think you got? Who do you got in the hot seat, bro?
I have two more, but I did have Dennis Allen in mind when this was a topic, especially after last night. Number one to me has to be Mike McCarthy. I don't see how he's in Dallas next year. I would be surprised if he makes it to the end of the year. How bad they are. Second pick is Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. That team is a dumpster fire, and Trevor Lawrence put it plainly that they're playing like shit. And that's your franchise quarterback you just paid hundreds of millions of dollars, and you guys are bottom 5 team sitting in the basement with the Titans, and no signs of looking up, and have spent so much of your cap already that it's going to be a rough rebuild and you're just going to suck. And I think you might as well have a scapegoat for it, and it's going to be Doug Peterson.
Yeah, the situation in Jacksonville is very odd. Let me tell you, because 2 years ago we all said, well, it's Jacksonville's division to lose from this point on. And then the very next year, after Jacksonville had that magical season, CJ Stroud comes in. And CJ Stroud came in and changed the entire complexion of that division in general. I think everybody respects the AFC South a bit more now than they did before. Now, it's still bad, but it's just not. It's just, you look at the Houston Texans and you think, okay, they can contend. Whereas in the past, it was Jacksonville, and Jacksonville.
That division was supposed to be so good for years to come because it was like T-Law, CJ Stroud, AR-15, and Will Levis. Like 4 young guys were supposed to be duking it out, and they all suck except for CJ Stroud.
Well, I think AR is just injury prone, and he just has a lot of mistakes.
If he can't stay on the field,
I think you're just injury prone. I don't think you suck if you just can't stay on the
You
field.
also,
You know what I
if you
mean?
look at his games this year, last year he was great when he was on the field. This year,
Oh, this year, no. That's what I'm saying. His boom is very, very good. His highs are high, but his lows are just so low. So he just has to find a happy medium where those highs happen more often and the lows happen less often.
and I will stand on business that Trevor Lawrence sucks.
No, I mean, I can't even. I just don't know what to say about Trevor Lawrence anymore, other than like the fact that it's got to be the situation around him at this point. I think that
He's just AFC Daniel Jones.
I don't think he is. I'll be honest. I don't. I think the last game that happened, I don't think it's on him. And I think there have been plenty of games where it hasn't been on him in the past. And you know, it's easy to point at Trevor Lawrence because he's the quarterback of the team, and the quarterback of the team is the guy who gets all the credit and all the blame all at the same time. And I get it. And if you want to give that to Trevor Lawrence, I'm not going to sit here and decline it because Trevor Lawrence, in fairness, has not performed very well this season. However, I will say that I believe, is more of a product of what's around him right now. Not a good offensive line, not very good receivers, and a head coach that is not very good either. So I just think that Trevor Lawrence right now, is he's still a good quarterback. I genuinely believe that. Now, generational, that's what the tag was. And unfortunately, if you're only a good quarterback after being tagged generational, then you are a disappointment. I don't think you're a bust, but you definitely are a disappointment. So I think Trevor Lawrence has definitely disappointed, but part of that has to do with the fact that the Jaguars just are not a very good organization, man. Like, even in their good years, they're just not a good organization. And you become a product of how bad your organization is. I mean, look at I hate to rub salt on the wound, Gage, but like, look at what happened with the Jets, right?
Trust me, I know.
Yeah, like, look at what happened with the Jets, right? I mean, they drafted Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, who knows what the future for Zach Wilson holds? But let's look at other examples like Geno Smith and how he has thrived. Sam Darnold, how he has thrived, right? Some people are just a product of the situation that they're in. So now they have Aaron Rodgers, and now they've traded for Devontae Adams, and we'll get to underachieving and overachieving teams in just a second. But I think the case with Trevor Lawrence is very, very different. I do agree though. Doug Peterson needs to go. Like, it's relatively unacceptable that he's still the head coach at this point. It's becoming very, very, very bad. Now, I definitely think that all the candidates that you guys just named are worthy candidates for being disappointing. Here's another one though that I do want to throw in there. I think something that I've been preaching to that choir for quite some time. Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals. I'll be honest, I don't know why he's still the head coach. I genuinely believe that Super Bowl run has carried him way farther than he has needed to go. And right now, it's just confusing. Like, I can't be the only one who sees it. I don't think I am. But Zach Taylor's actively holding this team back. The constant slow starts every single season. The offense being, at times, not very inspiring. Now the defense isn't good. So at what point does Cincinnati just take their ball and say to them, you know what, we need a new voice in that locker room, a new voice that can get Joe Burrow a competent offensive line, be creative with the play calling, hire a coach that can that can get these guys on defense ready to go. Quite frankly, Zach Taylor being a head coach right now is going to hold the Bengals back from another Super Bowl and even another AFC Championship appearance. So I get it. Everybody likes to talk about Joe Shiesty and the fact that Joe is such a great quarterback, and he is. And to me, he's been a top 5 quarterback this year. But we've seen it with Josh Allen. Just being a top 5 quarterback is not enough to go that deep into it's not enough to make Super Bowl runs. Okay. It was good enough for 1 year. And that year, your defense was great. But now, since then, yeah, you made an AFC Championship appearance. but we could see the writing on the wall with Zach Taylor, and I think Zach Taylor should definitely be fired at some point. This maybe not this season. I think a lot's got to go wrong this season for that to happen because the Bengals are just stubborn. But I think next year the Bengals should be with a brand new head coach. Now, we're talking about underachieving team with the Bengals. Let's bring up some more underachieving teams, courtesy of Gage. Gage, can you name me an underachieving team? I have a feeling I know who you're going to pick, but I feel like you might throw a curveball as well.
I mean, yeah, can I make it on any more obvious? We're a terrible organization with an even worse coaching staff. But the talent on the field's there. Talent's there. That's the only reason I can say they're underperforming. Devontae Adams moves the needle, but it's not going to win the Super Bowl, adding Devontae Adams. Offensive lines underperformed. Spent money on with Tyron Smith. Drafted Olu Fashanu. Went out and traded for John Simpson. Went out and traded for Morgan Moses, and still suck. Joe Tippmann, I think, is one of the bright spot in that offensive line. I'm hoping he develops into even half of what Nick Mangold was for the Jets. Really hoping.
I mean,
it's just terrible. The defense looked awful against the Bills in the first game without Robert Saleh. That firing was atrocious too. Yeah, I get he needed to go, but not 5 games into the season. You just don't do that for an organization that's supposed to be making the playoffs. You just can't make those moves.
It was just an impulsive. It was impulsive. It just was there's nothing else to really say. And bad and Mike alluded to this. A part of it is Aaron Rodgers. I think he has something to do with it, obviously. But I also said that Woody Johnson, the owner, has a lot to do with this as well, because there is no reason to bring in there is no reason to fire Robert Saleh 5 games into the season. If you're gonna fire him
after just losing to the 5-0 Minnesota Vikings in London, that's the game you want to fire your head coach?
Yeah, I would say a better time to fire him would have been A, at the beginning of the season, B, at the end of the season if you do overachieve, or if the team is off to a god-awful start, which they were not off to. They were off to.
If we win in Buffalo on Monday, guess what? We're first place in the AFC East.
Yeah,
what are we doing here?
It just made no sense at all for the Jets to get rid of Robert Saleh, but they did.
That's what the Jets do. That's what terrible organizations do. That's what I think the only two teams that may be worse run than the New York Jets is the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Carolina Panthers. I think that is the only two that just facilitate mediocrity better than the Jets. And that's what they always are, what they've always have been. And I'm hoping that's not what they're ever going to be, because I've been doing this for a very long time, watching this. Not as long as a lot of people. People have lived and died before they will see a Jets Super Bowl.
That's such a sad thing to think about, especially since the order.
It has been.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot to get out of.
It has been 75 years. 75 years.
Wild. That is wild.
I also want to throw out another team that's underperforming.
Yeah, go ahead, absolutely.
And it other than the Jaguars, we already harped on them. The Philadelphia Eagles are in no man's land. If you do make it to the playoffs, you're going to get destroyed. And luckily the division's terrible around you. And surprise, surprise, the Commanders, or hint, hint, playing out of their mind. And Dallas sucks. Giants suck. So good for you, Eagles. You also suck. What do we do? What are we doing here? You're supposed to go to the Super Bowl again. You're supposed to reload after last year's disappointment. And you show up, Saquon, all these additions, and you're mid.
Mid, yeah. Yeah, I was yeah.
So I'm good on underperforming teams because there's so many, but those are my big two rants.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Eagles are a case where it's just there's so much to be desired from a team that's 3-2. Like, I get it, they're 3-2. It just seems like they're still like, I don't know what it is, and it has everything to do with coaching, because I think the talent on this team is exceptional. I mean, we talk about Jalen Hurts. I don't think anybody really thinks that Jalen Hurts is an elite QB, but he definitely is a good QB, certainly good enough to get you to a Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley, an offensive line that is still really good, a great wide receiving core, but it just seems like there's something missing in the terms of play calling. It also seems there's something missing on the defensive side, and I guess it's funny because like Howie Roseman gets a lot of credit for making these great draft picks and getting these elite players or so-called elite players. The truth is, Howie Roseman just does what social media tells him to do. Newsflash, social media half the time doesn't exactly work out. Social media general managers are just that. Social media general managers, okay? They do not know everything. They don't, okay? At the end of the day, your organization has to do the work and the research to figure out what's best for your team. And for the longest time, I feel like Howie Roseman has gotten away with the fact that he, does the popular pick. He gets the sexy player I remember last year they brought in Darius Leonard, and Darius Leonard did absolutely nothing. Everybody was clamoring for it. Everybody was like, oh, Darius Leonard. Anybody who watched film, anybody who watched Darius Leonard play knew that he was not the same player. But guess what? Howie Roseman, he saw the name Shaq Leonard, Darius Leonard, and it just hasn't been the same since for Darius Leonard, honestly. I think he's goes by Shaq Leonard, by the way. I could be wrong, but I'm not gonna sit here and debate whether a guy who's out of the league right now, if his name is right or wrong. So, man, Mike, disappointing teams, brother. Go ahead.
Cool. It's got to be the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy, the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones, absolute dumpster fire. Your opening win, you beat the shitty ass Cleveland Browns 33-17. Then you get blown out at home by New Orleans. You lose to the Ravens. That was actually a close game. You barely beat the Giants, barely beat the Steelers, and then you get blown out at home again to the Lions. I mean, that team is so dysfunctional. You've got the owner going on radio stations threatening to fire the host of the radio station. I mean, they have to be the most underachieving team ever right now. I mean, they look like they shouldn't even be in the NFL.
I don't know if they shouldn't be in the NFL, but I definitely will say that, like, because they do have a rich history. Granted, it's history, But I will say that the Cowboys, Jerry Jones, and I think we got to point Mike at Jerry Jones, right? Like, it's easy.
I agree.
To point it. Like, look at everything that Jerry Jones has done has not helped. Everything. And even if it was the right move, it just wasn't good enough. I mean, and straight up just lying to his fans, the Cowboys fans. Oh, we're going all in. He goes with a smug look. I think the worst part was the smug look on his face when he said that. Oh, we're going all in, only to sign nobody. Quite literally, Gage, Mike, he signed nobody. That is insane. That is ridiculous. How do you do that? Like Mike, man, that's ridiculous, man.
Usually Jerry Jones goes all in for players. So this was surprising. And people were saying, well, you know what, this is good for the Cowboys because now we're not expecting, Super Bowl or bust, but it's the Dallas Cowboys. It's always Super Bowl or bust. And yeah, he signed the guys that he had there. Again, he waited until the first week of the season to sign his quarterback. He should have gotten that done way earlier and then focused on getting Derrick Henry or somebody else in there. But now he's got to live with the results, and they are in no man's land. They're not doing anything. And I think people are starting to believe now. I mean, why are we still talking about in the media at this point? Like, they're the same thing every single year. They're never going to change, and they're underachieving yet again.
Yeah, I definitely think that. To be honest, though, like the only reason why I might push back a bit is that I really expected this from the Cowboys. Like I know, like the big joke is like I know the Cowboys are the Cowboys, and they're gonna beat on some of the bad teams. They're gonna be relevant at the very least in terms of like playoffs possibly. But yeah. I think the fact that they look this bad and they've been blown out twice, once by a really bad team, the other time by a team that might be the best team in the NFC with the Detroit Lions. I mean, there's a lot. There really is a lot going on in Dallas. I'm going to give you guys another underachieving team, and I think you guys are going to be a bit stunned by the team that I'm about to pick. I think that the San Francisco 49ers have left a lot to be desired this year. And I know it's mostly because McCaffrey's out, but I do think that some of the losses this year that they've suffered, and I get it down the line in maybe December, they're going to have it tuned up for sure. But I feel like the brand of football they're playing is just not theirs. I feel like the defense has kind of underperformed more importantly than that. Brock Purdy looks fantastic, which is good, but particularly Brandon Ayuk, who signed a huge deal, has just been not really effective. And I don't know if it has anything to do with Brock Purdy, but I think that the fact that the offense isn't as explosive, yes, I know McCaffrey has a lot to do with it, but you saw Jordan Mason has the ability to run the ball. He has a great ability to run the ball. And when he gets back, when McCaffrey gets back, he and Jordan Mason are going to be a great duo for sure. My issue becomes that I guess the offensive line is just not very good. And I feels like Shanahan is constantly trying to coach around an offensive line. Newsflash, you're not going to win a Super Bowl if your offensive line is not good. I mean, you might make it to the Super Bowl. You might have a chance, but you might have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, if you have a bad offensive line, that is going to come back and bite you. And look, the Niners are likely going to win their division because the Seahawks are just, I think the Seahawks are just the Seahawks. And no matter how good they might seem, they're always going to be, I mean, until further notice, I mean, the last Seahawk QB to beat the 49ers was Russell Wilson. Okay. And Geno Smith hasn't been able to do it. So as long as the Seahawks can't beat the Niners, I'm not gonna sit here and bet on the Seahawks at all. The Niners, I still think, are gonna win this division, but they've been off to a very rough start. And if they don't fix the problems that they have very soon on both sides of the ball, look, man, it might be an earlier playoff exit than people think, because the NFC this year, particularly the NFC North, which we're gonna get into in a second, there are 4 teams with 4 wins in the NFC North. All the teams have 4 wins or more, and they're at the top of the division. And they're at the top of the NFC. So I think the Niners got to pick it up very soon. I know you don't play your best brand of football in September and October at all, but they got to step it up, man. I think there still has to be a lot to desire. Now let's finish on a little bit of a lighter note. Let's talk about some overachieving teams that have definitely played well above their expectation. I do in this segment, I do want to ask though, if these teams are going to stay the course. Are they going to be able to continue this momentum towards the end of the season? You know what I mean, Mike? So who do you got and that is overachieving so far?
So I would say the Chicago Bears. They started 1-2, a little slow. Now they've rattled off 3 in a row. So they're 4-2. They came out of London. They had a great game. Caleb Williams seems like he's starting to click with the offense. Keenan Allen seems to have gotten back healthy. So they're starting to look good. And they pretty much have one of the number 1 defenses in the NFL with Jalen Johnson and all them back there. So I didn't think they were going to be anywhere near what they're doing right now already. Maybe I thought they'd figure out the end of the season. But now they're clicking on offense and defense. And Caleb Williams is starting to show that maybe he was worth the number 1 pick. So a little bit of overachieving team right now is definitely the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears look a lot better. For sure. I think the offense is flowing a lot better. Granted, winning against the Jaguars isn't necessarily a flex, but I mean, I will say that Caleb Williams has definitely looked a lot more comfortable. I feel like the offensive line has been a lot better as the weeks have gone on. And I think the fact that you have 3 wide receivers that can take the top off the defense, well, maybe not Keenan Allen at his age, but you got Rome Odunze and DJ Moore taking the top off of defense. I think that definitely helps me. We're finally starting to see DeAndre Swift become more productive week after week. Still don't like their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, and Matt Eberflus I'm still iffy on, but I do think the Bears are back on track. And man, they finally have a good quarterback. I don't think anybody really is talking about this. They have not had a good quarterback ever. They've never had a great quarterback in the history of their franchise. For a franchise as like historic as the Chicago Bears, you would think that they've had like maybe a couple of quarterbacks like that are like hitting, but no, they've all been terrible, Gage. So next up, Gage, who do you got? Who is overachieving, and do you think they're going to hold on?
Overachieving has to be the number 1 team, clearly overachieving this year, the Minnesota Vikings. And no one at the beginning of the year would say Sam Darnold's going to be top 5 quarterback, 5-0 team, beating the Texans, the Jets, and they beat and the Green Bay Packers as their first 3 of their 5 wins. Well, I mean, will they keep it up? That's going to be a tough ask. I don't know if they're just capturing lightning in a bottle right now, or if they're just that good. The defense is fantastic, and Sam is playing great. If they continue this, they're going to be a playoff team and a rough out. I do think they continue enough of it. They do get in the playoffs. They will win a playoff game, but then they're going to face a Detroit, San Francisco, and maybe a Washington Commanders team that I think gives them trouble.
Oh, wow, the Washington Commanders. I'm surprised you mentioned that team along with the juggernauts like the Lions and the Niners. I think that's a nice second. An overperforming team is the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels is that guy. Yeah, I don't think anybody expected Jaden Daniels to be that guy this quickly either. Like he's hands down been the best rookie QB in the league. Like, no question. I think he's been better than Caleb. He's been Drake May and Bo. Well, Drake May just started, Spencer Rattler just started, but he's been better than Bo Nix as well. I just think that, man, it's crazy. It's crazy because the Washington Commanders heading into this week, they're 4-2. They lost to the Ravens, and there's no shame losing to a team like the Ravens, who are a buzzsaw. And Mike said last week, nobody wants to face this team. Nobody does. This offense is elite. Let's just put it to you straight. I mean, they're number 5 in yards per game. They're the number 2 offense in terms of points per game. I mean, they're the second best third down offense in the league. Red zone leaves a lot to be desired. But I think what pops off more than anything is the fact that Jaden Daniels has played with some tremendous poise, like in his rookie year. And Dan Quinn has gotten a second chance as a head coach. He had a stint in Dallas, and clearly Dallas is missing him tremendously, for sure. But he's learned from his stint in Atlanta. I think a lot of people forget. People did not really like the hiring of Dan Quinn. But Dan Quinn's been to a Super Bowl. Okay, Dan Quinn's been to a Super Bowl. He's been part of Super Bowl caliber teams, and I think that people forgot that when Washington hired him, and he's been perfect. Now the defensive side of the ball, it's definitely underachieving. It's not a very, I'll be blunt, it hasn't been very good statistically when it comes to the defense, but you still got pieces like Bobby Wagner and Frank Louvu, who have both been absolutely fantastic for that team. And I just think the Washington Commanders, I know it still seems, I'm still iffy on going all in on them. I don't know if I am going to, because I think they're just, right now, they really haven't faced anybody crazy. I do think that they played very well against a Baltimore team that's, I think, is Super Bowl contending. So maybe if they could compete with Baltimore, I think they can compete with any team in the league. But competing and beating are two different things. Can they beat the top teams in the NFC? Can they beat the Lions? Can they beat the San Francisco 49ers? Can they beat the Minnesota Vikings? Can they beat Green Bay? Can they beat all these teams in the NFC that I think are fantastic? I don't know. Time will definitely have to tell. But I will say we gotta put our hands up and see what happens when it comes to the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, I'll say it again. I'll shout it to the mountaintops. He's been absolutely phenomenal. And I think that as long as he's playing at this level, the Commanders are going to have a chance at every single game to beat him. So, quite frankly, those are our underachieving and overachieving teams. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Gridiron here at House Call Sports. My name has been Sam. Well, it is Sam. Hello, my name is Sam. Mike, that has been Gage. We will see you guys next time. But first, please like and subscribe and comment down below. What do you guys think of all the content that we just discussed? Is Dennis Allen gone? What about all the coaches on the hot seat? Who do you got being fired early on this season so far? Please like all of our social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, or X rather. We got Facebook, TikTok. Please go ahead and follow us on all those platforms. We will see you guys next time. Peace.